Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly product analytics sync. It is August the 22nd, and I'll kick us off by sharing my screen. All right, can everyone see? Cool, getting some thumbs up. So first agenda item is to review the build board. I'll start with the open issues. The planning issue we can probably skip. We have an open issue to add product analytics to the experiment feature list. I think this is assigned to, or this was created by James. Don't know if anyone has any points to add to this.
This really doesn't become necessary until we first get out to customers, and then this is a control specifically. So to clarify, the experiment features list, I guess, does align with the experiment label, but we're hoping to use this as kind of an opt-in for beta. So it's really not until we get past the first external customer phase, where we're out to a couple like select customers, where we want people to have an opt-in mechanism. So I don't think it's something that we can. It's not been ready for development, but I think it's worth looking at in terms of validating the solution, in terms of how we currently use it. And the bulk of the controls for this is for AI assist features, but that's an issue to call out as far as like refining is all I'll add there.
Yeah, I had a quick look at it. It is very AI specific in terms of how it's implemented currently. So there will be a case of refactoring whoever ends up figuring out how this is going to work.
Yeah. Does it make sense to keep this assigned to the current milestone, or should we move it to the backlog and then assign it to a specific milestone when it's ready?
Well, I mean, there's nothing stopping us from like starting the work, right? Of course, it's a risk to like, do we start it and not merge it until it's actually ready? But if there's a conversation worth having with the people currently kind of maintaining that area, or the code owners, it might be worth to actually start doing some of that work now to be like, hey, this is very AI feature specific, but we'd like to start using this for other features that are just wanting to use experiment label. What do we like? I guess I'm kind of fine leaving it in the current milestone because it seems like there is work that could be done there. There's just someone's got to pick it up and start the conversation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, happy to hear other thoughts on that though.
No, I think that sounds good to me. I guess we can follow up and see, like, if someone hasn't picked this up, then we can maybe just assign this to at least have a DRI.
Can we? Sorry, it's already got the loop. Never mind. Or sorry, it doesn't. But I'll add it.
Moving on, we have moved group and admin analytics settings to a dedicated page. This is in solution validation, so I think just needs some eyes on. It doesn't currently have a DRI, but I looked at it and it makes sense. So yeah, hopefully we can just move that along. Moving on, we have removed product analytics ClickHouse connection string field. This currently does not have any workflow labels. Does anyone know anything about this?
Yeah, so this was created by someone else. I also caught this in my testing last week. This was a field that we used to configure ClickHouse when we were using Jitsi. That's no longer required because the configurator for Snowplow has that settings built into its cluster configuration. So this is a field, this is a database field that's no longer used. And so we should definitely just remove it. I don't even think we have to wait for a major breaking change since the feature itself never made it out to GA.
Okay, in that case, I'll pull it into ready for development.
Thank you.
And then we have a docs analyze GitLab usage. This is assigned to Lorena. Anyone have something to add? Seem like it. Moving on. We have projects cannot reset up product analytics at the project level if they've already onboarded. This is also in solution validation. Okay, moving on from that.
Dennis, do you want to, are we ready on that one, or do we still want to talk about the solutions more?
I haven't read your response on that. Do you want to chat about it really quickly?
Yeah, it's fine to basically I agree with you. We should add resetting when you reset the config.
Yeah. I just don't want to, I mean, I guess we can debate like what to follow up or not. But So just for context for the group, like if you set up product analytics for your project when there's an instance level cluster configure, but then you say, for example, you want to connect one to your to a private cluster, because we're using the same ID, GitLab itself doesn't know to like reset that, or that you want to do something different. So this discussion was about how do we want to handle that in terms of, do we want a separate column for a project level ID or not? And so I hadn't read Alan's, I'm trying to read it now very quickly, but basically like what I was proposing is like when you enable product analytics at the project level, it either wipes that field so they can get a new one so that you can reinitiate that onboarding process. Because what happens is you'll get stuck in a this loop of waiting for events, or you'll see your old dashboard, or you'll see nothing. Sorry, I think you'll see nothing or waiting for events, but then there's no way to actually initiate that onboarding process because your project level cluster doesn't actually have, sorry, GitLab thinks it has an ID, but it actually needs a new one from the project level cluster. So this is trying to figure out like how to handle that. So in that case, you're okay with yeah, that's best to clear it. So I'm happy with that if you are, but I'd be
okay.
Curious to hear what other people think about it as well, if they have any thoughts. But basically, you know, whenever you enable or disable product analytics at the project level, what we're proposing here, Alan and I, are to clear out the application ID so that can reinitiate the onboarding process. Basically allows the user, you know, maybe they were trying out instance level or the shared environment, they want to go to the private and then they wanted to go back. Like it just allows that mobility in configuration, especially if we go beyond that with group level or anything like that. So
my only comment would be that we'd need some way of clearing up the old data at some point, so we don't end up with lots of dead ClickHouse databases because people have jumped from instance to projects on at least .com. So I guess initial step, at least step one, would be just in the documentation suggesting people export their data before, because there's no guarantee that it will be there later on after you've moved. Does that make sense?
yeah, we'll have to navigate. That's a good call out. We'll have to navigate that because at some point we'll have like a data retention policy. So does that mean we eventually, I don't think we have to worry about it right now, but do we offer migration paths of like, if you had data somewhere else, do you want to bring that with you? Or do we just flat out say like, if you change this, export it, because if we're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to bring it over. But that brings up a lot of different questions that we should definitely be asking. So I'll create a follow-up issue with kind of like those lingering questions.
Because once we call out in the docs that your data won't be there if you clear the configuration, then we could just drop the database as a background task, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like we can give them a warning saying, hey, you're about to move from one cluster configuration to another, like back everything up first or export it, because we will mark it for deletion and insert, you know, whatever our policy is going to be around that there.
Seems like a good discussion. Yeah, I think it makes sense. And Rob's call out, yeah, good call out.
Yeah, writing a comment for that.
Cool. Moving on, we have the brainstorm ideas for customer interviews that it has its own agenda item, so I'll skip that. And Halil's on PTO. Moving on to ready for development, we have the improve analytics settings UI text and the new custom dashboard flow MVC, specifically the available visualization sidebar. I'm planning on picking this up after I work on the dashboard, but if anyone else has capacity, feel free to work on this. Like it's not blocked by the work I'm doing, and it can happen in parallel. And this one I just moved from open. Then in dev, we have Alvin working on add ability to remove panels in our dashboards. This seems like a useful change to have, because currently you can add panels and then you're kind of stuck with them. Yeah, he's not on the call. I think this is still like he's still working on the MR, so don't know if anyone has anything to add. Does seem like it. Then
sorry, in the maybe he left a comment, just something I would check maybe.
Yeah, I did previously check the issue, and it
Gotcha.
didn't seem like there's anything new on this. I just saw that he created AMR to start work on this. Dennis, you have a confidential issue for customer-facing infrastructure release. I don't know if there's anything you can or want to say about this.
Yeah, I can. From a general point of view, I think we're all aware it needs an issue. We do have one. Sorry. But this is just all the infrastructure topics related to that. What I can say is that I'm working with another SRE to hopefully get this over the finish line this week. And then I'm also rounding out the work in terms of fully enabling ClickHouse Cloud support, which I can speak to a little further down the column later.
Rob, you have the next two for the missing breadcrumb, and then also the big upstream cube change. Anything to add?
Yeah, breadcrumb I haven't touched since coming back from OOO. It definitely won't be. I'll see if I can get to it by the end of milestone. It is just one of the lowest priority items on the list out of all the other tasks that I need to focus on for our goals. With the with fill, I finally got the integration test completed just before this call. So all unit tests, all integration tests are now done. My next step on this is to update my list of how do you get Cube working in relation to our stack. So if we need to make further changes to Cube in future, or anyone wants to have a play, they'll know exactly how you can get it working, because I spent far too long trying to figure that out. I'd like to document it somewhere. And then I'll be requesting some input from either Elwin or yourself, Jan, just to look over the code, make sure you're generally happy with it, obviously within the context that it's not our repo. And then I'll be putting out a PR.
Sounds great. And yeah, thanks for creating and sharing the documentation after you've struggled with it. I think it's going to hopefully save us a lot of time in the future if we ever need to work on this again. Right, Dennis, you have the next one for connecting ClickHouse to the analytics stack.
Yeah, so I don't think this issue even has a good description. It might have literally just been those 6 words. I'll surprise myself if there is. Okay, well there are a little bit more words for that. So basically, but not many. I think we're generally aware. I can share my screen a little bit in terms of what's happening with the stack. But basically,
let me stop sharing.
Thank you. Just to give everyone a little bit more visibility into what's going on. One thing is I've updated this 4,700 word readiness review if anyone would like some reading for bedtime reading. But if not, we've had to make some architectural differences, changes to support ClickHouse Cloud. And this is publicly available, so there's nothing super crazy here. Just so people are aware, we are looking to use ClickHouse Cloud because on one hand, it removes one part of the kind of event pipeline that we have to manage on our own as a company. ClickHouse Cloud is approved for red data. So now the focus and this is all in the context of GitLab.com or SaaS, is that the cluster then only has to worry about data in transit and making sure that's encrypted. And we've already made all of those changes in the past months to make sure everything is encrypted in transit. Just trying to make this a little bit bigger. So in order to support ClickHouse Cloud, I've had to add another piece into the stack called Vector, which is essentially just event delivery. It's a full-blown event pipeline. Basically, it pulls events from Kafka and pushes them over to ClickHouse Cloud. This is because ClickHouse Cloud itself, or for people who weren't aware, ClickHouse in the cluster actually connected directly to Kafka and pulled events from Kafka, which is a really cool feature ClickHouse has, but is not supported in ClickHouse Cloud. So you can see where I'm going with this, where there's another piece that had to be added to actually support the delivery of events from Kafka once they're enriched by Snowplow to push that over to ClickHouse Cloud. That part was working. That's what I showed last week. So that's all proven out to work. But what needs to change now is the interactions between Cube and configurator, so that configurator needs to be able to handle and create different database table types for ClickHouse Cloud, as well as, Cube should be just a configuration thing of being able to say, hey, instead of connecting to an in-cluster ClickHouse host name, I think we could just already in their values YAML file, just be able to say, hey, connect to this ClickHouse Cloud instance. Here are the credentials, and you're good to go. So to summarize, we got event delivery to ClickHouse Cloud going, but we need to update the configurator in Cube to be able to actually, one, set up the projects, and then be able to query the data from that. But everything else is working as expected. So should be able to get that wrapped up this week. Any questions
Very
about that?
cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yep. Awesome. Back to you.
Cool. Hey, finally, my issue. This is quite a big one, just because the designs require a lot of change, and a lot of those changes will require a lot of work and aren't fully compatible with GridStack.js, which we're using under the hood to render our customizable dashboard. Rob has very graciously given me a lot of his brain and time to help figure out like a different approach, like a new layout for that is compatible with all the requirements that we want for this MVC, but using existing pajamas components without adding any like fancy pseudo panel or the stepper, which I don't think we need right now, because I'm not even sure we're going to introduce the concept of user selecting a data source, since that doesn't necessarily make sense on our dashboards, because that's something that's tied to a visualization, not tied to a dashboard. So yeah, I've made some mock-ups here to prove that this is actually a lot more straightforward. This is already working, and it's something I can demo, and that's something I'll do in the weekly PM UX call tomorrow. So if anyone's interested, please join that call and we can discuss this further. Then in review, we have two issues from Alvin, which is update the product analytics string and improve analytics dark mode. I believe all the analytics string changes have just gotten merged, Rob, seeing your head shake. So I'm going to move this to verification. And then the dark mode is in maintainer review with me. And then you have extend service ping for more tracking. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, that one is pretty close. That I've just got a couple of MR comments to finish up and merge conflict, but it is pretty close to getting merged. So
okay, great. Yeah, I think those last comments were probably from me, but the change itself looked good, so I think we should be able to get that merged soon.
Yeah, I want to address the instrumentation instructions comment thing that you pointed out, because that is not intended. So I want to get that sorted.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let me know if you need any help or like you need a patch or anything like that. Happy to jump in. Then yeah, verification issues. We have one from Halil, which is confidential, so I'm not going to touch that. Then in terms of bookmarks, I checked that we don't have a bookmark for the previous week or the week before that. So I'm gonna skip
Keep going down, or
I'm gonna skip to stuff that was like completed this week, unless anyone knows or thinks that we have to go like back a month basically in terms of changes. All right, let's just go back a week. So Khalil works on this change. He also wrote a comment here saying that the single dashboard page will, or rather the dashboard list will no longer throw a 500 error when a dashboard references a visualization that doesn't exist. So the user just made like a typo or something in their configuration. And instead, this error will be shown on the new fancy panel error display on the single dashboard page. This is a big improvement, and it means that the whole like experience doesn't completely bug out for users if they do something wrong, and it also helps guide them into an action that they can take to resolve this. Next, we have two from Alan. Anything you'd like to add about these?
Nope, just pretty straightforward bug fixes.
Great. Then from Alvin, we have update the dashboard style to match the latest designs. I can maybe demo this by going to the MR. It looks pretty sweet. So yeah, here is our before, this is our after. It's simplifying a bit. Maybe in terms of contrast, it's getting a bit too simplified for my taste, but it's something we can iterate on. And overall, it's getting much closer to matching what our end like design vision and goal is. Then I have the next one for creating new custom dashboard flow. Oh, this is just an issue that I closed that was essentially promoted to an epic, but there is already an epic, so there's no point promoting this. So it was just closed because I created several implementation issues for this. And the milestone issue we don't need to talk about. Right, James has the next agenda item, which I'll read out. He opened up a issue to brainstorm how to get feedback from our customers during the beta and early GA of product analytics, and asked for input from everyone. I just asked the general question if this has been done before, and maybe we can ask like the wider GitLab team on Slack if this has been done, and for ideas. Just off the top of my head, I remembered something from Code Suggestions, and I saw that they have an alert on their documentation asking for feedback. And yeah, any other ideas or feedback from the team on this feedback issue, please add it to the issue. Dennis, you have.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how much time we'd have in the meeting.
Yeah, we still have 5 minutes.
Yeah, we can discuss it if we like with the people that are here, and then move to async since stuff to get everyone on the same call anyways. But basically one of my first points was about the build board, making sure people still feel like they're getting value out of that. Rob shared that he still feels like it's useful. I find it useful. I mean, Al and I were able to make a decision very quickly on that. So I think, having rotating time zones is still able to accommodate everyone, get everyone into a sync meeting at some point, and then for whatever else, we can do it async. But those are just Rob's mind thoughts. I'd be curious if anyone else has anything they'd like to share about the build board here.
Yeah, something that I can share is I feel like the general review is nice. I feel like walking the open column is sometimes not necessary. And it's something that can be done async to just like help clean this up and make sure that everything's assigned to the right label. I think like the best discussions oftentimes come out of like what's happening in terms of like issues that are busy being planned or actively worked on.
Yeah, I think, and so maybe, I guess it really should start with an issue, because what I'm thinking is like, maybe there's some points of improvement we can make, and this is all timely, of course, with mid-years and things like that. But basically, like a lot of times when especially because we have alternating time zones too, we rarely, if ever, have the entire team available for those that aren't available on the call. It can be hard if we don't actually have direct contact with those issues to be able to actually provide context with what needs to be done there. So I don't know if that's something we can provide like async, like that's why we check comments on that. But I guess maybe it's just like, again, not to provide updates for the sake of providing updates. If there's nothing to share, then that's also fine as well. But I think maybe one thing worth reiterating to people is that, yeah, if you're not going to be there for time zone reasons or otherwise, make sure the issues you have on the build board, at least if there are questions to ask, that you ask them. But I think we already kind of do that async anyways. So they just kind of get resolved outside of the group sync. But just something to think about just as I kind of go through the issues and I don't see an update. And I guess part of that's because I don't have a lot of contact with a lot of the day-to-day issues at the moment. I'd like to, but yeah. But anyways, I can follow up with an issue to get more thoughts and get suggestions as well if you think there are improvements to make to that. I definitely agree. Like going over the same, issues that are in the milestone, but they're not ready for development, but they're not in solution validation either. It can be a little tedious, and unless you've gone through these issues a number of times, you don't know really to skip them, and we end up repeating them multiple times.
Yeah, and like we're checking in on the same thing like over and over.
Yeah.
would be
But-
good to have a
yeah.
workflow label attached to it, and then we can at least progress it, or know to just skip it because it's like.
Yeah, it definitely, like, I think everything should have a workflow label. I'm just thinking out loud, like loud, is like, one thing is we had that make product analytics and experiment feature added to the experiment features list. Like, I guess in reality that is solution validation, but like, I'm glad we discussed it this time, but we'd kind of, at least in the past, kind of skipped over it. But like, that helped, like that providing that clarity in terms of like what we're trying to do there is useful. But I guess if anything, maybe that means that there shouldn't be any issues in the open board because they need workflow labels. So maybe that's something we can discuss in issues.
Yeah, sounds good. Did you want to discuss any of the other read-only points? I think we have 1 minute left. If we want to call anything out.
In a minute, probably not. So I'll create an issue, but definitely take a look at it. Offer some async thoughts if you like. I'll transfer them over to the issue and we can go from there. I'll try to get those done this week.
Well, in that case, thanks everyone for joining, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.